Chileans head to the polls to vote in historic referendum on replacing the country's dictatorship-era constitution. Mexicans march in support of the government. And Pope Francis names first Afro-American cardinal. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South. In Chile, polling stations have opened for a historic referendum on whether to change the country's dictatorship-era constitution. More than 14 million Chileans are eligible to vote on replacing the current charter, which dates back some 40 years to the rule of General Augusto Pinochet and is accused of promoting social inequalities. Apart from deciding whether to replace the constitution, Chileans will also vote on what kind of body will be in charge of writing the new one, either a so-called mixed convention with 50% of members from Congress and the other half by elected voters, or 100% elected by popular vote. The referendum is the main result of last year's protests, which began on October 18th and continued until mid-December, as Chileans gathered nationwide to call for reforms to the country's pension, healthcare, and education systems.
I have become accustomed to voting early because as well as this time we have other things to get done during the day.
We hope that lots of people come out to vote. It's important to vote, and we hope they come with the same enthusiasm that all of us here have.
And following nationwide demonstrations and the demands of the Chilean people, today, as we mentioned, the country celebrates the national 2020 plebiscite, in which citizens will vote for the approval or the rejection of a new constitution. It should entail structural changes in political, social, and economic matters. Let's learn more about this process.
Since 1980, the country has been ruled by the constitution created by Augusto Pinochet's military regime, which has intensified economic, social, and political inequalities. In the 2020 national plebiscite, the Chilean people will decide where they will move toward a process that will generate a new constitution and the mechanism to be drafted. More than 14 million Chileans were called to vote. Citizens will be able to choose between two ballots. The first will have the question, do you want a new constitution? Which can be answered, I approve or reject. And the second, what kind of body should draft the new constitution? Which shall be chosen from a mixed constitutional convention composed of equal parts of popular elected members and members of parliament in office, or a constitutional convention in which only popularly elected members will be accepted. At the end of the election period, the members of the Bureau receiving votes shall count the votes obtained in each of the ballots submitted. As the tables complete their counting process, which will generate preliminary results, the definitive ones will be published on the website of Chile's Electoral Service. In case that the I approve option wins, the constituents will be chosen to write the new constitution and will meet on April 11, 2021. Same day in which the municipal and regional governor elections will be held.
For further analysis, we are now joined live by Kayla Popuchet. She's a contributor to the online outlet Anticonquista and NYC Housing Court Specialist from New York, the U.S. Thank you so much for joining us, Kayla. So we've seen protests take place in Chile for over a year now, as we mentioned, and the demanding of the drafting of a new constitution. Now that the referendum is taking place today, what are your thoughts on how the day will look like?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm glad to share my thoughts here from New York City. So all major polls show that Chileans are going to approve a new constitutional convention. What matters now is whether they're going to decide if they're going to have a new constitution made by and for the people, or through a mixed bag of people and lawmakers who we all know are the elites of Chile and want to maintain the system that under 40 years, the dictatorship of Pinochet brought onto them. So the Chileans are likely to vote for a new constitution. What matters most is now what can be done in the future. And what I think is especially important for us all to remember, and if there are any audience in the United States, is that this constitution is literally the product of U.S. imperialism and neoliberal dictatorship for the Chilean people. This is not a constitution that was made or even thought of the lowest degree of the Chilean person, the worker, the average mother. They were not in the thoughts. It was the US and European elites and the Chilean national bourgeoisie who were the primary benefactors of this constitution. So Chileans are making a historical event. They are going to choose if they are going to undo the 40 years of neoliberal dictatorship, if they're going to undo the 40 years of US influence in their country and finally get to regain power of their country.
So if the Chileans do decide to have a new constitution, which you mentioned they probably will, what are the most important aspects that should be taken into account when drafting it?
Well, one of the things that I want people to remember, and especially for us, our viewers, is that we have to pay attention to what the percentage is going to be. So there is an order that if they're going to change any part of the Constitution, that there needs to be a 2/3 majority that agrees in it. So what is especially important tonight is that we're going to see how many Chileans are going to come out. So we know that it's going to be approved, but how many are going to approve it? Is it going to be an 80%? Is it going to be 70%? Anything less than a 2/3 majority is very, very scary. What could happen is that the right wing, the ones who want to negate the approval of this, who want to reject a new constitution and want to maintain neoliberal dictatorship, they can have a significant influence in when they're changing their different articles. So it is very important tonight, not only how much are they going to approve it, but it's going to set the precedent of what is to happen when the Constitution does get rewritten, and who is going to have power in it. Is it going to be the right wing? Is it going to be the center left and the workers? We don't know yet.
We'll have to wait for that. So do you expect protests to stop if Chileans do decide to replace the constitution, or do you think they will continue?
The protests will most definitely continue. Now, tonight is going to be especially interesting because we can see if they do get a majority, and when I mean majority, more than 2/3 for the approval of a new constitution, we will see right-wingers coming out and fighting against the decision of the people, because that is ultimately what they do. If they lose, or which they might not, but if they do not get a significant majority, the people will still probably come out and they will still, voice their espouses and their wishes for what they want to see. And the campaigns are going to continue, because just because they've approved a new constitution doesn't mean that everyone has the same political ideology or has the same idea of what they want to see for Chile. So different sectors of the political classes are going to come out and going to protest, going to hold rallies, going to give political information, because this 2-year process that will come is going to be the biggest moment for Chilean history. So the actions, the movements will not stop here, but they will take a very different characteristic in what they say.
So you're currently in New York City. Could you explain to our viewers a little bit about what the outcome of this referendum could mean for Latin America, for the region, and also for the rest of the world?
So for Chileans, this is obviously a historic moment, but for the Latin American diaspora, as I'm sure this is going to be a surprise to no one, but many of the people who are here are leaving imperialism, leaving the remnants of colonialism and neoliberalism that has driven people out of their countries and forced them into the hands of the Europeans and the United States politicians to come here and try to find some type of new life. So for Latin Americans to regain their power over their country and to make pivotal decisions in their own country is going to be historic. One, it will also stop this unnecessary needed migration into the hands of countries that are not that much better off and also are literally hurting their own countries. But it'll also set a precedent for the countries surrounding Latin America that this can be changed. These neoliberal dictatorships, these dictatorships that are controlled by the criollo elite, can be undone. And this can happen through political movement, but it can also happen through a vote. And like we just saw in Bolivia, that the people protested for over a year, denounced the coup regime, and ultimately then they got to vote to literally kick out their coup regime and US imperialism. This And with Chile combined with that, this is going to set historical precedents for Latin American people and the diaspora. And the diaspora who do not pay attention much to Latin America, maybe don't even understand why their families are here, can start looking to back to their parents' motherlands and see what the US has done. See what and this can also translate into the United States. When we understand and build the connections to why are our families here in the United States, why were they forced to leave their countries, it can also set some changes in the United States. So hopefully that will be done.
Carla, we thank you so much for your time, and I'm very happy to be able to speak to you. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you again soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Now, for the latest updates on the ground in Chile, let's go now to our correspondent Alejandro Kirk, who is on the ground in Santiago. Hi, Alejandro. What's the latest?
The latest is that we have come across the city to interview a deputy at his home, and we in our right here were able to see huge crowds of people going to vote. This is something that maybe it's normal in other countries, but not in Chile. In the last elections, we have seen a 60, 70% abstention and people not willing to vote. Older people were the only ones voting, and the younger people just did not trust the system that has compelled them to be in debt for education, private health, not having a future. So this is totally new here. That's why we came here to see Deputy Thomas Hirsch. He's an independent deputy and former presidential candidate. Thomas, thanks for speaking with TeleSUR. What's the meaning? I said there are huge crowds. What's the meaning of young people voting at this point?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to TeleSUR for being here now. I think it's one of the most important days in our life in Chile. Finally, after 30, 40 years, we are going to be able to get rid of Pinochet's constitution. I think that we are the only country that 30 years after a dictatorship, we still have the constitution of that dictatorship. There's no other country in the world with that situation. And today, yes, as you said before, we are seeing a crowd voting. Many years, the politicians said that young people, they are not interested in voting, they are not interested in politics. That's not true. Definitely is not true. The point is that when there is something that is important for the young people, for the people in general, for the Mapuches, for the women, for the workers, for the students, they are all going to vote because they know that it's important for the future. So I'm very happy that people are participating since very early in the morning. We saw crowds of people everywhere. I was voting in Peñalolén. It's a very poor area of Santiago. It's part of my district. And we had very long queues. But from the other side, everything was very quiet, very working very well. So I think we are going to have probably 70 or more percent of people voting in this election.
The turnout is important, but also important is to win a landslide majority for the approved option in the referendum. Some people are saying, Tomas, that this referendum is not worth because it was cooked by the powers that be, and it's another repetition of what happened in 1988, where political forces got together to keep the constitution and the neoliberal system that it supports. So why is this going to be different? How?
Well, first of all, I'm absolutely sure that this plebiscite and this process is the result of the mobilization of the people, not of the kitchen, as we call it, that happened last year in the 15th of November, an agreement that was signed by some of the politicians from the different parties. This is the result of people who, a country that woke up. We say Chile despertó. Chile is waking up. And because of that, of the pressure, of the mobilization, Now we have the opportunity to get rid of the constitution of Pinochet. The politicians, some of them, they want to say that is their result, is what they done. Definitely, it's not like that. In fact, me, myself, and Acción Humanista, my movement, and many other political parties and movements, we didn't sign that agreement. We didn't agree because it was absolutely non-democratic. They stayed out of the room, the social movements, the original people groups from this country, Mapuches, and all the other groups. The students were not in that room. They were not able to discuss and to propose. At that time, the women were still discriminated for being in a parity relation in the process that we are starting now. So that agreement, 15th of November, was not a real democratic, popular agreement. And we didn't sign it. But now we are participating with a lot of energy, with a lot of enthusiasm in the plebiscite because it's the result of the mobilization of the people of this country, not of the agreement in the kitchen of some politicians.
Well, but yet it is them who set the rules for this most likely winning constitutional convention. So the rules that they put together impose a two-thirds majority for every decision. Otherwise, there will be no decision on key matters and things will keep as they are now. So what's the key to break that limitation and go forward according to what the people are demanding? More mobilization, or as it happened in 1988, telling people to go back home?
Look, being a member of the parliament, I'm absolutely convinced that the changes they never happened in the institutional level. The changes happened because people organize themselves and people mobilize themselves. That's the key issue. And it has been always like that in the human history. The end of slavery, the 8 hours working day, the right to vote for the women, everything, if you look back in the history, was the result of the organization and the mobilization of the people. The institutions, they go after that. The same happened here in Chile. So,
But the people don't have, these people who were demonstrating did not have a leadership nor followed political parties. On the opposite, I mean, they
yes,
actually reject even people. I mean, politicians going there were expelled.
not all. I was always there. So, not all. And people know exactly who has been always with them. In my case, for example, I've been 40 years fighting against Pinochet's constitution, as many others, of course. I was in jail because of that, as many others. I threw the constitution of Pinochet when I was a presidential candidate to the garbage, to the trash, because it was a bad constitution. But yes, people reject the politicians that were completely separate from the people. And I think that's a very interesting attitude. It's true that since last year, since October last year, there were no leaders as the normal way we see in demonstration. And I think that's something very interesting. The new generations, they like a new way of relation, a new way of organization without a specific leader, but more with a connection, is a sort of a sensibility. And I think that's quite interesting. I think the old political parties, they have to rethink the way they behave and the way they have the relation with the people. I think that's not only in Chile, definitely, in everywhere in the world, in Egypt, in Spain, in the States, everywhere the relation between the political parties and the people is changing. People don't believe in the old institution, nor the political parties, nor the businessmen, nor the church, nor even the sport leaders. I mean, they are all in a question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch, for talking to TeleSUR. And that's it for now, Stefania. We are going to be on top of events here. Probably later on the final results coming around 8 in the evening, and the huge, according to what we have heard, celebration to take place tonight at Dignity Square.
A very, very important day for Chile, and of course, TeleSUR will continue to cover this important day along with our correspondent Alejandro Kirk, who's in Santiago. Thank you, Alejandro.
Sure.
Let's take a
Cheers.
short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Venezuela is holding a voting drill on Sunday to get people familiarized with the voting process ahead of the December parliamentary elections. 55 polling stations have been set up for the day to test the operation of an electronic voting system, especially the transmission and counting of votes. This drill will allow electoral technicians to check if the system functions smoothly and evaluate its efficiency in case it needs any adjustments ahead of December 6th. All necessary sanitary measures have been put in place in all polling stations to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus.
It is important to note that today we are accompanied by international election observer missions, and each of the audits they carry out are also accompanied by a technical team of election observers who evaluate the softwares and hardwares we use.
Moving on, COVID-19 cases in Colombia have reached 1 million, becoming the second Latin American country to reach the milestone in less than a week. Colombian authorities have reported that the country continues to record around 8,000 new infections a day, even though there has been a slow decline of newly confirmed cases since August. Colombia imposed a 6-month lockdown to reduce the spread of the virus, and yet nearly 30,000 people have so far died from the disease. Latin America has been particularly hard hit by the pandemic due to the weak public health system, social factors like poverty, and poor government decisions.
It was not only reaching a million. We are certain and we are afraid that what is coming is going to be worse. The number of hospitalized patients is going to be larger. If we had any deficiency before, if we had to increase the number of intensive care units, the number of ventilators and ICU beds, what is coming next, all is still going to be insufficient.
Thousands of Mexicans have rallied in Mexico City to show support for their government. They marched from the Independence Monument to Capitol's main square in a rally dubbed the March of the Million People, denouncing an anti-government movement which has stationed itself outside the offices of the president. Anti-government protesters say they are not satisfied with the way President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has been handling the coronavirus pandemic.
We came to support our President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. We came to support him because now we do have a president. Never before did we have a president. They never knew we existed.
Pope Francis has named Washington Archbishop Wilton Gregory to be a cardinal, making him the first African American to hold the title. The 72-year-old Gregory is one of 13 cardinals in the new class announced by the Pope on Sunday, a promotion that comes as he is trying to rebuild trust in an archdiocese rocked by sexual abuse cases. The Vatican said the ceremony to elevate the new cardinals would take place on November 28th. Gregory was appointed Archbishop of Washington last year to take over for Cardinal Donald Wuerl, who had been accused of mishandling clerical abuse cases. He will be eligible to vote in any papal election until he reaches the cutoff age of 80 years old.
We bishops will always have the deepest regret for those who were abused and who must live with that pain and all of their lives. No apology can undo that. Yet we must never cease to remember them, reach out to them, and ask for their forgiveness.
3 people have gone missing after a Russian oil tanker was damaged by an explosion in the Sea of Azov. The Russian Emergencies Ministry said the explosion of the General Asi Aslanov took place on Saturday as the tanker was en route from the port of Kavraz to the port of Rostov-on-Don. Authorities said 10 members of the tanker's 13-person crew have been rescued, while the remaining 3 were believed to have been thrown overboard by the blast. The tanker has stabilized and was towed to a nearby port. Officials said the tanker wasn't loaded and the explosions may have been triggered by flammable vapors left behind from the vessel's previous cargo.
The research and rescue operation is currently underway. Throughout the night, we used a helicopter and 7 vessels as part of the research and rescue operation. For the people who found themselves overboard, altogether we searched through around 400 square kilometers without results. Now, with the coming of daylight, we're continuing to use 6 vessels and have expanded the research area. We are additionally using 2 M18 helicopters of the Emergency Services Ministry with rescuers on board.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on StarSat, channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And also be sure to follow us on social media. For TeleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.